Hey guys, so I was just thinking, I've been watching a lot of Let's Plays lately, mostly on Half-Life and Portal, and they're from a guy named Kelski, who made some pretty good videos that I've watched. I really wish you could make content like his. I would need to hire an actual editor for that kind of stuff, though, to talk about video games and such. Although I kind of focused, my channel here is mostly focused on politics, but I also like talking about fantasy stuff. I was just thinking, I'm watching his Let's Play of Black Mesa right now, and I just find the entire Zen portion of the game absolutely insane. Because it's not just like, dude, how do you even explain it? So, for people who aren't aware, back in like 2001, I think, a game came out called Half-Life. And people should know what Half-Life is. And it spawned a few good sequels. Was that 1999? I think it was 99. And then Half-Life 2 came out in, what, 2004, I think? It took like 5 years for a sequel to come out. There were a few expansion packs made by Gearbox. And then they came out with Episode 1 and Episode 2. And Episode 2 greatly improved on the engine. And I think the engine was also used in Portal 2. I don't remember what came out first, whether it was Portal 2 or Half-Life 2 Episode 2. But anyways, a bunch of guys came together and they wanted to remake the original game using the Source engine, which is what Half-Life 2 and its sequels were made out of, or expansion packs, I guess. So they started remaking the entire game. And they made a few controversial decisions. For instance, they basically cut out the entire air vent maze that was in the original game. Which, if you don't know, there was a part after you get attacked by the US military who's trying to cover up a military experiment that went wrong. And you have to flee underground, and you end up in a ventilation shaft connected to various rooms throughout the Black Mesa facility, which is literally built into a mesa in New Mexico. And it's nearby an actual real-world military base. I think it's an Air Force base. I can't exactly remember. But it's kind of near Roswell, where they did like a whole bunch of experimental tests with airplanes, which includes like flying saucers and stealth bombers. Anyways, there's like an air vent maze, and it's really easy to follow. It's not that complicated. Unlike the first, you drop down, and then there's a ledge you can go into, and then it cuts off into like 3 directions. And at the end of each side, there's a drop down where you can like gather supplies, fight a few enemies, and then get back up. And then you drop down to the second level, and there's 2 entrances. You can go in there. Both the dead ends that lead to more supplies, and then you drop down to the 3rd level to continue on. And if you have any like reasoning whatsoever, you should know that, hey, they're literally bombing the surface. They're like sending missiles down. In that situation, you want to get as deep as possible. So if you want to skip the entire maze, you just drop down to the bottom level to get as deep underground as possible. Because you want to get back in the facility. And that just makes sense. But the Black Mesa team decided it was too annoying and they didn't want to deal with that, so they just cut it out of the game entirely. Then, one of the most famous sections of the game that some people complain about, like, half of fans kind of like it, half fans kind of don't. And it's a section called On a Rail. So in the original Half-Life game, you start on a tram and you travel down a rail system. And it's pretty cool. But like the Black Mesa facility has supposedly been open since like the 40s or 50s. So there's an older system deep underground that's no longer used. And it's like a convoluted mess because the paths don't lead anywhere anymore. Like a lot of sections have been cut off, or everything down there has been deconstructed, taken apart. There probably used to be offices and other stuff down there that's not used anymore. It's mostly like maintenance tunnels now that have been abandoned. And it's kind of a maze, but if you don't know what's going on, there's like a few things going on with the section. Like, for example, there's like a turnstile switches that you hit in order to like switch the tracks to determine like which direction you go. And the only problem they had with it, this is a game design video, by the way, if you're not figuring that out, but if to hit the switch, they never explain what you're supposed to do. There's like little arrow signs that flip back and forth, and you can shoot the sign or hit it with a crowbar and it will flip over to show you like which direction the thing's gonna go. And they like cut it in half. There's like a lot of stuff that they added that's really cool, really cinematic, and makes the game look really good. And some stuff that they added that doesn't really make too much sense. Most of what they added is really good. Like a lot of dialogue that they add really adds a lot to the experience. It actually makes me really sad because as a Marine, I want to believe that we would never like be used in a cover-up of that magnitude where we would be eliminating American citizens. Like, we should be smart enough to know that if scientists accidentally created a disaster, that the scientist would be the best option to fix the disaster, which is what happens in the game. Eventually, you have to make your way across the facility to end the disaster that was caused. And again, if you don't know the plot of Half-Life, I'll just explain it really quickly. You basically gather up crystals from another dimension or another universe, and then you take them back and then you scan them, but they don't, you don't use a mass spectrometer. You use what's called an anti-mass spectrometer, which doesn't exist in real life. That's not a thing. And if it was antimatter or antimass that you were scanning, anything that antimatter would touch would instantly explode. Because antimatter, the nucleus is negatively charged, and the electrons are instead called positrons, and they're positively charged. So when you take antimatter and you put it next to matter, the nucleus of the antimatter is negatively charged and the nucleus of matter is positively charged. So they collide together and they just explode, destroying everything except possibly the neutrons. And then the positrons and the electrons are also oppositely charged, and they hit each other, and they also explode. Not as violently, it's not as big of a deal, but it still, like, adds some destruction. Not a lot. It's like 5 or 6 order of magnitudes weaker, I think. No, it would be I think it's 5 orders of magnitude weaker. Anyways, so you scan these crystals, and the experiment is that these crystals are supposed to help with teleportation technology, making physical portals in the air that you can use to teleport from a location to location. And when you put the crystal into the anti-mass spectrometer, as it's the purest sample that they have ever found, it causes what's called a resonance cascade, which means that it starts a portal storm, meaning that portals to the other universe start happening all over the place, and it expands out from there. So at first it's just the Black Mesa facility, and then it's hinted at that it expands out further and further and further until it engulfs the entire planet, which means that there's aliens being transported randomly into like people's houses and lakes, into like the ocean, onto ceilings, out in the middle of the wilderness, and they just start killing everything. They're like panicked, they're freaking out. A lot of it's wildlife. Some of it is intelligent, and they're also confused, but they're also just hostile. And eventually they get an order to start trying to conquer the planet, the sentient ones. And then an all-out war starts. And Black Mesa, the remake of Half-Life, really shows just like how the war starts at the Black Mesa facility, and then throughout the game you hear like emergency broadcast radio messages that first say anything within a 75-mile radius should evacuate, and then the second one says 150-mile radius, until the last one comes on and it says the entire state of New Mexico must be evacuated now. Any person, anyone with military training or firearms expertise whatsoever, needs to go talk to a military recruiter right this second. Like, they literally set up a militia out in town to start, like, out in the entire state of New Mexico to start fighting back the alien invasion, because they really did not expect an entire invasion force hitting the entire state of New Mexico as it spreads out even further into like Mexico and Texas and Arizona, more than likely, until the entire war engulfs the entire planet. So at first the government cover-up was because, they just thought that, hey, anyone who knows that we're developing weapons technology by exploring portal technology and invading an alien universe to gather up crystals that we can use as a power source. Like, we don't want our adversaries knowing about that, so we're just going to silence the entire facility. And again, that makes me really sad, because when Half-Life was made back in the day, the people who made it didn't know a lot about the military. So, like, they have a boot camp for the U.S. Marine Corps inside New Mexico, which doesn't exist. There is no boot camp in New Mexico for the Marine Corps. There's only one in Parris Island and Camp Paladin. Now, there's training facilities all over the country where they might treat you like a recruit. They don't treat you like you're an actual Marine. But in the game, I think they often refer to like the Marines as soldiers, and they have medics, and they don't use proper military hardware. They use like an MP5, I think, or an MP7. And they use a Spaz 12 shotgun. Again, not stuff the U.S. Marine Corps uses. Now, it kind of makes sense from a story perspective that the Special Forces guys would have something similar to that. But they make a lot of like little mistakes about how the Marine Corps runs. Like, for example, we don't use medics. We don't have roles like that. We don't have combat medics, and we don't have chaplains. And since we're part of the Department of the Navy, we get our chaplains and we call them RP. I guess you could call them a religious protector, but that's not what that's not what the name actually means. It's basically a guy with a machine gun or with a fully automatic rifle that is there to protect the chaplain. And then we use corpsman, which is a Navy personnel member attached to the Marine Corps to act as our medic. But we call them a corpsman because they are attached to the Corps, or we'll often just call them Doc for short, because a lot of Marines just don't know the rank structure of the Navy. And there's so few Navy personnel embedded within the Marine Corps that it's just easier to just call them Doc than learn the entire ranking system just for like one or two guys that are within your unit. And again, just small things. Playing Black Mesa also makes me really sad because I am part of an infantry unit. Now, nothing I say ever reflects on the Department of the Navy, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps. All my political opinions are my own. But in the game, obviously it's a Special Forces infantry unit that has like carriers and tanks and like armored personnel carriers, like the whole shebang. And I'm actually part of an infantry unit. And throughout the game, you like hear guys talking and like, why are we like silencing civilians? I didn't sign up for this. I was here to protect America, not, fight against my own countrymen. Or some people like are complete psychos and they're just like, man, I really wish these stupid scientists would fight back. This is no fun whatsoever. Or in other situations, like you see them fighting and you want to go down and help them, but as soon as they see you, since their orders are to take you out and you have been resisting them throughout the entire game, they never like stand down. They like always fight you too. But you hear them over the radio being like, I lost my leg. I'm bleeding out. I need help. It's like, you gotta put on a tourniquet, man. It's like, I lost my medical supplies. There's nothing. I can't. Like, look, listen, you gotta find somebody's med kit. We call them an IFAK. And like, you gotta find an IFAK and get a tourniquet on there. Can you hear me? Are you okay? And it's like, no, he's obviously bled out. And you can just hear them like freaking out on the radio. So there's some times where you like walk into a room and there's like a few guys panicking as they fight the alien invaders, and they lost all discipline and they end up losing a fight they really should have won. And it's just so depressing because I imagine my buddies fighting in a situation like a completely hopeless battle like that. Black Mesa is just so good, dude. It is so good. People are like, oh no, you shouldn't play Black Mesa. You should play the original Half-Life and forget Black Mesa. And that is just so silly to me. Now, a big reason why people say that, to be fair, is that in the game, or like during the course of development of Black Mesa, they started to develop it in like 2014, I think. And then they released like the first versions of the game in like 2015 or 16. And they were building onto it slowly over time. So a lot of people played it like in say 2016, 2017. and they didn't even get the full experience, and like there were glitches and problems, and not all the dialogue was added, and not all the details were put together, and like it kind of like dragged down the like opinion from other people, because like you tell somebody who played it in like 2016 who had like an okay experience, trying to convince them to play the 2014 version, which is fully released, covering the entire game, and is like 3 times as good, is like a hard sell to somebody who's like, nah, I already know it. Like, and if somebody has good memory and they go back, a lot of the levels are the same. And like some of the changes, like I said earlier, like cutting out the vent maze, which personally to me is stupid. Like, it's not that hard to memorize. I'm sure it was for somebody who's just rushing through it and really not paying attention, they'll like get completely like turned around and lost, and I can see how that would be frustrating to them. Or how On a Rail really doesn't explain the mechanics. Like, all you would really have to do is just have a character stand there and say, hey, by the way, when you go down there, you'll see these little signs that will change the direction that the path is going. Just get down and like hit those switches occasionally, and it'll send you down a different path if the path you're going like loops you around. I get why they didn't add that kind of dialogue, but at the same time, it's just like, if you think that you can't recreate this section of the game to be fun, then you're really like either short selling yourself, or you just lack the confidence to take something that had issues and make something good out of it. Again, it's just kind of silly to me that they like just like said, you know what, I don't want to deal with the challenge of like remaking this part of the game. I'm just going to cut it out entirely. There are a few other design choices that are like kind of interesting, that kind of make sense. Like at one point you're supposed to grab a rocket launcher turret, which you can't move, but you get onto it, and then you're supposed to use it to shoot down a door. Now, you do something similar with a artillery piece earlier in the game, but it's like way smaller, it's not as obvious, it's like kind of obtuse. So instead, in Black Mesa, instead of doing that, they give you the turret, and then they have a tank like drive through the door that you're supposed to blow open. And instead of using the turret to shoot the door, you use the turret to shoot the tank. But then you have to manually load in the shells, or like the rockets, into the rocket launcher, which isn't explained. Which it removes an obtuse part of the game, adds something that's a little bit more intuitive, but then adds in a custom manual loading system into the grenade launcher that you have to do, which makes it obtuse again. And I've watched at least one guy struggle to figure out, again, it was Kelski, struggle to figure out what he's supposed to do, because it doesn't give you enough time to figure out that you have to load in a rocket into the device before you shoot it. I just thought that was kind of funny. It's like they added something to make it more intuitive, and then they added a feature to their intuitive thing that made it unintuitive yet again. Oh man. But anyways, I'm watching this Kelski stream from like a year ago on Black Mesa, and he's at the Zen point. Now, a big part of the game, I think I played it in like 2020, I mean. And I was playing the game, and they hadn't finished the alien planet yet. And this is like the most impressive part of the entire game for me. In that part of the game, in the original Half-Life, they were kind of on a schedule and they rushed through it, and you go to the alien border world, which is a bunch of floating rocks in what looks to be like a nebula or on a planet. But the rocks are like floating above the surface. Like there is no planet below. It's like you're just sitting in a gas cloud, and like the physics don't make any sense. It's just like a completely different world that we can breathe the atmosphere in. But the way the world works is just so different from reality that it doesn't work. And it doesn't work like our planet does. As a gameplay concept, it's very interesting. And the gravity is really low. It gives you a bunch of platforming sections with a bunch of floating rocks. It gives you the ability to double jump, basically. It's called the long jump. It's basically like a jetpack that they strap on your back that like launches you through the air. It's really cool. And even though it's low gravity, if you jump off a high place, you can still die from fall damage. And in the Source 2 engine, you don't go back to that border world. Like, I'm not in the Source 2 engine, in the Source engine. Source 2 was what Half-Life Alyx was made using. In the Source engine, you never go back to that alien world. So there's not a lot of assets to use. So what really impressed me about Black Mesa is that over the course from like 2020 to like 2024, they were having to build entirely new assets, entirely new landscapes, an entirely new skybox of this alien planet that doesn't look anything like Earth. I mean, there's a few things you would recognize, like rocks and a tree that still looks kind of alien. And it's just wild looking. It's so cool. And anyone who never went back and played it, I am going to go back and I'm going to play the hell out of that game and get all the achievements. I'm probably also going to add the mod that adds back in, like, the cut areas. Because there are mods where people are like, oh, you got rid of, like, half of On a Rail? Fine, I'll go make On a Rail, and I'll make it good. And, I mean, I appreciate that as well. It's such a good game. It's so good. I don't remember if they sell it. I don't think they do. If they sell it, it's probably like 10 to 20 bucks. Such a good game. I just wanted to talk about some game design for a while. I really should, like, at some point, hire an editor and get, like, a bunch of gameplay footage and then write a script on, like, different parts of the game and have somebody edit in all the parts together. Like, hey, it's like this part of the game. Yeah, my problem with editing is that you have to, like, learn a lot of stuff, and you have to go through a lot of hardship and trials and, like, experimentation, and you might never get a firm grasp on it, and there's like 1,000 different programs and like techniques you can use, and some of them are more intuitive than others, and you can learn an entire system, how it works, just to realize that, you know what, this isn't the best way to do this. So you have to learn an entirely different system that may not take as long to figure out, but by God, it will take you months of experimentation, of work, hard work that no one will ever see, just to make a video that might get 1,000 views, or it might get 1,000,000 views, depending on how YouTube wants to, like, behave that day, or how the algorithm is currently functioning. And it's just it just feels so not worth it. It really doesn't. It really does not feel like it's worth it to like learn how to do all this like customization and editing and programming and different like techniques for something that might give you like no reward whatsoever. I like the low effort content where I can just talk about off the top of my head about the stuff that I already know instead of learning entirely new stuff. Like the whole editing thing. But you know what? I'll leave it at that though. I would say everyone should go play Black Mesa. If you haven't played the original Half-Life, play Half-Life 1 on Steam. Don't play Half-Life Source, where they took all the Valve, took all the assets from the original Half-Life game and put it in the Source engine, and then they upgraded some of the graphics. There have been a lot of changes to the Source engine, and instead of just leaving Half-Life Source as is, they just like updated the engine running their version of Half-Life, and it completely destroyed the game. And Valve dropped support for Half-Life Source a long time ago. The fan community has been working for a long time to get Half-Life Source to work, making mods and stuff. But if you just play the original Half-Life, you get basically the same experience, but without any of the bugs. And it's just so much easier that way. My God, I'm completely lost right now. I got distracted talking to you guys. Oh well. I like making videos, and I haven't been making them in a long time, so some game design theory for you guys to think about. Not too in depth, but you know, it does its job. So, talk to you guys later. Bye.